Well, I was going to ask the same question. Find out about the news is officially about Chris Jent. Just wonder how you managed to make that happen, when those conversations started, and what that adds.
Well, I think Chris and I were having dinner. I just got done working out here. I just apologize. And I'm drinking hot coffee. That's the smartest guy in the world. Chris and I had talked, gosh, a couple summers ago. We were having dinner. He was in for the summer league, and I was out recruiting, so we were having dinner and just kind of talking about things. And I'd always told him, I said, look, if this NBA thing doesn't work out, I'd love to have you back in some capacity, some form. And a few months later, they got let go there in Sacramento. Last year, being the D League coach was a great thing for Chris. I mean, he loved it. But when the opportunity arose and Jeff got involved, I talked to him, and he said, without a doubt, I'll be back. Just let me know.
So, what sort of impact does it make on the program, adding a guy like that back to the rotation and having him on your staff?
Well, I think first and foremost with Chris, I love him as a person. I love the fact that his appreciation for this university is second to none. And this place being successful means a great deal to him. I think that you go to school here, you play here, you meet your wife here, all those things go in, and then you look at the basketball side of things. I think from Chris as a player, being an NBA world champion, playing overseas, coaching at a lot of different places. He's been an NBA head coach for like 28 games. Those are things that he kind of brings to the table, and just in terms of his basketball knowledge, his intensity, and he's in great shape and probably could start for us next year if we had to.
Thad, do you know yet how maybe the division of labor, if you want to call it that, sort of splits up now between your assistants now that Jeff is gone and Chris is in? Do things change at all?
You know what? I haven't got that far yet. I think once Chris gets in and gets back in, comes in tomorrow morning, and we're putting right on the road recruiting. But once we sit down on Monday as a staff and just kind of regroup and take a look at things, we'll start divvying all that up.
In terms of recruiting, you guys were able to get out on the road this past weekend, and yourself and Dave and Greg, I suppose, got out and got some things accomplished. Were you pretty happy with how last weekend went, I guess?
Yeah, no question. And we got one more weekend. This is the last weekend. Not that I'm looking forward to it, but we're done off the road. We've been gone Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We've been on the road, and we'll do final evaluations or whatever this weekend. But we've also got an official visit this weekend with CJ, and so I'm kind of in and out, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Ohio, are you making that more of a emphasis of the Midwest? I mean, after, for lack of a better term, Texas and Georgia and some of these other places not working out maybe as well, are you trying to get back to the Midwest roots with guys, or what do you think?
Well, I think that without a doubt we would love to do that. I think that a lot of times there's a lot more that goes into it than just a real good basketball player in terms of kids in the Midwest. I think sometimes people forget the academic standards that we have at this university is probably as high, if not higher, than anybody in the Big Ten, and I like that about it. I mean, average ACT score for the freshman class this year is a 29. So there's dynamics in terms of that we have to. It's not always as easy as people think it is to recruit our own state, but we've had some great players from the state of Ohio. We've had some great players from the Midwest, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
Back to Chris for a second. In your discussions with him, I would guess that recruiting is the one thing he hasn't done a ton of. I mean, maybe when he was here, I don't know. What did you talk about with that? I assume he's confident he can do it, but is that the area he maybe needs to grow in?
Chris was here. I mean, the one player that he was kind of spearheading in recruiting was a kid named Jay-Sean Tate. And that one has worked out really, really well for us. But I think from this, and you guys know Chris, he's a very personable, very intellectual person. You just look at the experiences that he's had in terms of all the people he's dealt with. And I think recruiting a lot of time is establishing relationships. It's being able to listen on a phone conversation and hear what they're saying without saying it, those types of things. And I don't want to say common sense, it's not that. But then there comes the work ethic and putting in the effort to, do the best that you can to get the kid. But I think from that regard, Chris will be in really good shape. He did a phenomenal job when he was here in terms of getting us in on kids. Some East Coast kids did a really good job in Ohio, and Chris has that personality that you like to be around him.
Yesterday, how important was getting a guy like that and to add point guard depth, and what do you see his role maybe being?
Well, very excited to get CJ. I think from the standpoint of he's an older kid. I love the fact that he played for his dad in high school. He was at Mount Verde for 1 year. Going to the junior college, anybody that can make 100 threes in a season is pretty special. He can definitely shoot the basketball. Tremendous young man. I like the fact that he comes out of Mount Verde and commits to George Mason, and there was a coaching change. He says, you know what, I'm going to take the hard road, the long road. I'm going to go to junior college for a year and see if I can't put myself in a better position. To his credit, he did that. I mean, he had a phenomenal season. His team had a great year, made it to Hutch, and it was funny when Dave went down to see him, talked to him, and he called me and says, look, you're supposed to call this kid at 8 o'clock tonight. I'm not going to tell you anything. And talking to CJ on the phone, I mean, just a tremendous young man, a very respectful young man, and very appreciative of the opportunity he has to come here.
How did he end up on your radar? How do you find a kid like that?
We were in the hunt for guards. Really around December we started saying, hey, we're probably going to need another point guard, and so we just kind of looked around and loved the fact that he was a qualifier out of high school and very intelligent kid. So his coach was tremendous with us, and we were able to get in and get it done.
Back to Chris for a second, but when Jeff starts interviewing for Stony Brook and you're not exactly sure how it's going to play out, what is that like when you're, I assume, talking to Chris about, hey, we might have an opening, and you don't know what is going to happen with Jeff? What was that time period like?
Well, it's funny because Chris and I talk all the time, so it wasn't, it wasn't like, hey, Chris, this is Thad. I know I haven't talked to you in 2 years. We talk a lot, so there was nothing out of the ordinary in terms of that, and I'm happy for Jeff in terms of the situation he's in.
Thad, I know you said you haven't sort of divvied up the responsibilities up, but people know what Chris did when he was here and sort of know his background as a shooting coach and kind of an offensive-minded coach. I'm wondering when you made this decision, if any of it had to do with maybe giving your offense sort of a kickstart if you felt it needed it, and what Chris maybe can help in that regard.
Well, no question about it. I think that Chris has a great basketball mind. He likes offense. He likes the skill instruction, that sort of thing. But Chris is also a guy that will do whatever we need him to do. But I think from the standpoint of getting him back in and just looking at the guys and sort of seeing what his thoughts are, and I've kind of given him a rap sheet in terms of my thoughts on guys, what they have to do, what they need to get better on, and so he'll kind of take it from there and run with us.
And then we're sort of bouncing back and forth between different topics, but with CJ having signed and not been here yet, is that strange for you? Have you ever had guys?
Yeah, I've had a couple. I've had a couple do that, and I think that nowadays in recruiting, nothing surprises me. But like he said, I said to him, I said, CJ, you haven't been to campus yet, and he says, Coach, I've been on the internet. I can tell you everything about your campus, that sort of thing. And so with that said, I didn't have an issue with it.
That you added another guy, Andre, late.
West.
Yeah. How do you envision him fitting in here, and maybe what did you like about him? I saw him play a couple times in high school. It seems like a guy who can play multiple positions.
That's what I loved about him. I think this with Andre. I'm very excited to get him, and as we told him, we were probably about as thorough recruiting him as we could possibly be. I love the fact that he wins. playing for Westerville South and the job Coach Kalo does. I've been to their practices. He's been coached, and he's got a terrific shot. He can really score the basketball for how tall he is. I was a little bit taken back by the fact that he is 6'7". Defensively, I think he's going to fall in those lines of guys that can guard multiple positions as well as play multiple positions offensively. You saw him in the state tournament. He's taking charges. He never came out of the game, and just a great kid. And with that said, you can add those type of guys that are hungry to come in here, and that's what excites me about him. That he sees an opportunity and he'll go work for it. Yeah, because we got in kind of late, and it's funny. Like Coach Kalo told me, he said if you walked in here 4 years ago and said you were recruiting him, I'd have said that he's not a college basketball player, and then he just kept getting better, and he just kept getting better, and he just kept getting better, and just watching the growth. I mean, when I went in to see him play, I was shocked that it was him, and I think his ceiling is very, very high, and obviously comes from a great family. I mean, Keith playing here and that sort of thing, it's a great situation for all of us.
That kind of taking a step back from that, with the guys that left, and how quickly it all happened, and just kind of that situation in general. You've obviously been around this game for a while. Have you seen anything like that, and how did you react when all of this was coming out? We talked to Kata about it yesterday, but I'm just kind of interested on your perspective as the head coach.
Well, it's funny because you guys are definitely the last ones to know, and we usually have a really, really, really good feel of what's going to transpire. I probably could have told you something was going to change and might have been spot on after the Florida game. But I think that's something that, from my perspective, I didn't blink. I want those guys to do well. Hopefully they find great situations for them and, achieve their dreams or goals. We're appreciative for what they did. But with that said, the train keeps moving. And, I think we've had a tremendous spring in terms of a basketball team, in terms of a program of where we're going, and quite honestly, I don't know if I've been this excited about an upcoming season as I am right now.
That, not to be a knock then on the guys that left, but if they had one foot out the door following the Florida game, and you're now down to players that want to be here truly, how much better is the atmosphere with the program inside these four walls?
Well, that's the thing. I think that you look at college basketball now, and I mean, it's crazy how many transfers there are and that sort of thing, departures, and when you get rid of guys leave and you get your core back, there's a little bit of excitement that, like, hey, this is who it is, and I love the energy these guys have. I love the work ethic that they've had this spring, and you do build throughout the course of a team or of a season and a year. You build a brotherhood in terms of your teammates, and being with the guys that want to be in there with you is something that I think it just adds a little bonus or a little energy to having them come together.
So when 4 or 5 of your 6 scholarship guys live together, is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Who's the one man out?
Oh, geez, I'm trying to think who has a single. Might be Trevor. I think that's right. I think so, yeah. Pretty sure on that, because he had one when he came here, if I'm not mistaken.
That I'm curious also with those transfers, how was that received on the recruiting trail? Did you have to answer a lot of questions from parents and kids about whether there was some sort of issue with the program, or how was that received?
No, it wasn't, anything too major. I mean, I covered it with kids and just said, hey, here's the situation, went through each guy, and that was sort of, it made sense to them and made sense to us.
So maybe case by case is how you sort of approached it then, instead of, it was sort of looked at as it all happening at once, but when you break it down case by case, it's maybe easier to understand?
No question about that. Yeah, I mean, from my eyes, it was not difficult at all.
Big picture. You've done this a while. This whole idea of recruiting and guys transferring, where does that rank in terms of the change, how this game has changed? And, you know, is that one of the bigger changes? Guys moving quickly, or the whole recruiting game?
Yeah, you know, I think that the landscape of college basketball has undoubtedly changed. You know, and to Steve's question, being out, like you talking to other coaches, and we've all got the exact same problems. We just wear different colored uniforms. But I think from that perspective, it's one of those situations that sort of is what it is in terms of instant gratification and you know, those types of things. And you know, some guys maybe aren't as patient and see the big picture, but that's part of it. I think the new millennial, whatever they're called, is kind of, you know, yeah, they're yeah, all these young guys out here, they want the corner office. You know, upon getting their degree, they want a corner office, but I think that's something that, you know, is probably the hardest part just in society right now. But with that said, it is what it is, and you deal with it and you move forward.
Following up Lori's question, why is the culture? It sounds like the culture is better, and I think I know why. Why is it better?
You know, I think from the season that we had, you know, it's been 7 straight years of the NCAA tournament, and you go to the NIT, and obviously we limped into the NIT with the injuries that we had, but you know, just there seems to be a sense of guys sort of maturing and growing up, and you know, I was just talking with Sam Thompson a second ago. Sam's back for a few days, and I said, you remember all those things you thought I was crazy when I used to say? I said, I was right, wasn't I? He goes, exactly. And, you know, sometimes kids don't want to.
You're talking about the process.
Yeah, the process, yeah. And, but, no, I like where these guys are. I love the guys. You know, I was with Derek Funderburk and Micah Potter this week, and just sort of love where their minds are, where their bodies are, and in terms of getting in here in early June and sort of moving forward with it.
You mentioned those two guys. Can either of those guys in your mind play the 4 position where you would have, I mean, you have so many big men, it seems. You have 4 or 5 of them on the roster. Do they have a skill set to play in that 4 position?
You know, they do, and I think from that perspective, they're a little bit different than what we have. You know, Derek has the ability, just watching him the other day down in Chatham, great body, very athletic. You know, we got to continue to hone in on his skills, but he can slash, he can move, and he's so long. I think he can be a great defender. And I think Micah, you know, he's sort of taken the off season. You know, they played up till in April, and had a phenomenal season. But you know, his body and his ability to shoot the basketball, I mean, he can really stretch a defense with a 3-point shot. So I think that there's a chance to kind of get back to playing kind of 2 bigs at the same time, and obviously a lot of that's predicated on matchups in terms of defense.
And the guys coming back, strength and conditioning, seems like it's very critical this offseason as much as any. Just what do you want to see as you have a plan probably for each guy? Come back at this weight, improve your strength, endurance, whatever. Just how critical is that offseason going to be for that?
Well, it's a huge offseason, and what we're doing right now, I mean, Dave has them, Coach Richardson has them, and we're trying to get them as big as we possibly can. We've changed up a little bit of spring lifting, what we're doing, and just trying to add the muscle, and, you know, knowing that it's going to come off once we start the season, that sort of thing. But you know, I like the numbers guys are putting up and that sort of thing, and you know, we're just about done because of finals coming up, that sort of thing.
You mentioned with all the transferring, do you worry now that, you know, young guys coming in, if they don't have that instant gratification, that they will transfer out? Do you worry about that when you're recruiting them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't want to say you worry about it, but it's sort of history kind of repeats itself. And you look at the last 3 years of college basketball, what's going on. you know, those type of things are going to happen, but I don't think it's anything that you can really predict. You know, I remember a couple years ago they made it where we now give 4-year scholarships, and I was like, well, for what? You know, but it just, like I said, it sort of is what it is, and I think from the perspective of trying to get the right guys at the get-go, that not saying that the guys that have transferred aren't the right guys. I'm just saying that maybe being a little bit more aware in terms of everything that's going on.
I guess this is a nice segue to this one. Which is more important in recruiting then? Getting guys that Ohio State wants or that want to be at Ohio State?
Maybe the best question I've ever been asked, honestly. And it's both, if at all possible. I mean, that's because, you know, the funny thing is I look at recruiting, and I was meeting with a kid the other day, and I was telling him, I said, you know, the best players I've ever coached never wanted to be recruited. They wanted to find a place where they could be successful, in their surroundings. They didn't need text messages. They didn't need tons of phone calls. They had self-confidence in terms of who they were. You know, Michael Conley, Greg Oden didn't care who was in our program when they came here. They just wanted to come to Ohio State. And I think that's something that, you know, if you can find that, those are the guys that are the most successful. You know, Evan Turner, I remember calling him saying, hey, look, either you're going to commit or I can't think of the kid's name, he's going to Florida, he's going to commit. I'm taking the first one. He says, Coach, I can't pass up on coming to Ohio State. I'll take the scholarship. You know, I had never even taken an official visit here. And you know, I think the rest is kind of history. Those guys that have a plan at a young age in terms of what they're going to do, and they're willing to do the work is probably the most important thing. You know, we say this, I want guys to walk around campus with their hands clenched, not with their hands out expecting something. You know, you have to go get the opportunity. And so phenomenal question on your part. Make sure you commend yourself on the drive home, because that was a great, yes, that was a great question.
Thad, do you anticipate that you're done now for 2016, now that you have a 4-man class?
Possibly. I hate to say never, because as kind of this whole press conference has been about the ever-changing evolution of college basketball, so you know, who knows what else can pop up.
And then Dan told us yesterday that I guess Greg is officially a manager for however long, unless he signs somewhere else, maybe when he's done taking his classes. But to have him around, I guess, in that capacity, what can that do for your guys?
Well, I mean, just as long as he can get my coffee on time, make sure that things are set up for practice. No, I think this for Greg. I want Greg Oden around here. You know, when I look at just the dynamics, when I think back to when I first started at Ohio State, and the first guy I went to see on July 8th, I think my press conference was on July 7th, was Greg Oden, Mike Conley, and Daquan Cook. And you know, you think back to where the program was at that point, and the chance that a guy like Greg took to come to Ohio State. I'm obviously indebted for the rest of my life to him. I think, you know, from the perspective of everything that he's been through, you know, just in terms of the injuries that he's had, and not being able to fulfill his dream, it touches me. I think that getting him back in the program, getting him back in school, Greg's as happy as I've ever seen him right now, and very excited to have him around, and because as you guys know, he's very knowledgeable. He's great with people, and I think it'll be a great thing for our program to have him around.
Do you see a coach in him, whether it be here or anywhere else in the future?
Yeah, I think that he has that potential. I really do. I think that you know, being with the different NBA teams he's seen so much. You know, this will, just being around on a daily basis will probably answer a lot of questions for him if he does have an interest in doing this. And you know, if he does, I'll definitely take care of him.